Good morning and welcome to today's Wellness Wake Up. I'm so happy you're here. I'm so happy to be here again. I am starting to implement a different kind of cadence. I accepted that every day showing up to go live was not realistic having a full-time job and with everything else that I do in my life. So we are moving to Wednesdays and Fridays, which is why we're here today. And then I am also today recording the first agreement because for some reason my audio didn't work. So sorry about that. But today's a re-recording of the first agreement from the 4 agreements. So if you haven't, the 4 Agreements is an incredible book I highly recommend reading. If you just want the synopsis and you want to tune in for the summary, then you're in the right place. So the first agreement is all about being impeccable with your word. Don Miguel Ruiz is who wrote the 4 Agreements, and the first one, and as he kind of explains, it's the most difficult, but also the most important one, is to be impeccable with your word. So he says that this one agreement can help you transcend from this level of like living in hell on earth in a sense, or living in this like self-created hell in our minds. And it brings us into what he calls heaven on earth. And he describes our words as like seeds, and we plant these seeds into our minds, and our minds are fertile for whatever seeds we plant. And so sometimes when we plant bad seeds or negative words, negative thoughts, negative agreements, if our mind is fertile for that, that is what will grow. So like he says, the main problem that we have is that our mind is fertile for the seeds of fear, which are the seeds that were planted for us when we were younger, growing up, just throughout the world. Most of the agreements that we hold are fear-based, and every human's mind is fertile for any of these seeds, but only for the kinds of seeds that it's prepared for. And so it's so important for us to see which kind of seeds our mind are fertile for and be prepared to receive the seeds of love. So he kind of talks about becoming aware of what your mind is fertile for, becoming aware of what grows, and then preparing it to be receptive for these seeds of love, for these agreements of love. Being impeccable is taking responsibility for your actions, but not to judge or blame yourself. So when we do something and maybe we're not impeccable with our word, maybe we use the word in a way that is fear-based or not necessarily as productive or conducive to our well-being, to not judge it or blame ourselves, but instead to take responsibility for those words, for those actions that we have. So being impeccable with your word is not using your word against yourself. And the way that we do that is by ending self-rejection. So oftentimes it's not just about being kind to other people, using our word impeccably when we are discussing life or problems or thoughts with other people. But one of the most important ways to be impeccable with your word is that internal dialogue with yourself. And so ending self-rejection is the way to be most impeccable with your word internally. He describes the word as a spell that we humans use on one another, like black magicians. We tend to thoughtlessly put spells on each other, just kind of spewing out our words and our agreements, which tend to be fear-based. And if you understand this first agreement, to be impeccable with your word, you begin to see all the changes that can happen within your life. Changes first in the way in which you deal with yourself, and then later with the way in which you deal with other people, especially those you love most. So I find that every time I read this chapter, I just gain so much more from it. I try to put it into practice as often as I can. And actually recently I was told by a friend that I wasn't being impeccable with my word and that I have an opportunity to grow there. And so I think that the thing that stands out the most to me today is to not judge or blame ourselves when we're not impeccable, because the moment we judge or we blame ourselves, we're not able to grow or to change or to see the area that maybe we're based in fear, and how we can transition into love. And so I think it's so important to be honest with yourself, to be receptive to when somebody shares that maybe you aren't being impeccable with your word. And again, remembering that the changes first happen within ourselves, and then it will ripple out to the way in which we deal with and interact with the people that we love and the people in the outside world. So I hope that you find this supportive. I hope that you go out and practice being impeccable with your word, whether it's today or this week, whenever you find this. And I would love to know in the comments below how the practice goes for you, if this is something that you already have implemented in your life, how you work with being impeccable with your word, and maybe how do you work with yourself when you're not impeccable with your word, because I think we can all learn and grow together from this one. I think this is definitely one of the most challenging ones. And Dominic Ruiz says that like this and the second agreement are about, I don't even remember what he says, but it's like 75% of all that we need to like live in this version of heaven on earth, is mainly to be impeccable with our word. And then the second one, which I already dove into, but you can watch it if you would like. And I will see you again on Friday for the third agreement. I hope you have a great day, and I appreciate you for being here.